When the rich and famous give birth, and I know that's none of us, right? But when the rich and famous give birth, their hospital stay can easily be compared, maybe except for the mom when she's giving birth, to a pampering spa getaway. But celebrities and royals aren't the only ones these days seeking deluxe accommodation and medical services. Anyone with the right amount of cash can choose a posh place to deliver their baby in style in A-list maternity suites. Jay-Z and Beyonce chose Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan for the birth of Blue Ivy. Their little bundle of joy, it cost them $2,500 a day. But at that cost, Lenox Hill Hospital offers luxurious suites with mahogany walls, hardwood floors, luxurious linens, its own kitchenette, even a concierge who can arrange anything from a stylish hairdo to a manicure, a pedicure, and a massage. I mean, you do want to look your best when you're delivering your precious little baby, right? The luxury suites of Mount Sinai Hospital go for $4,000 a day and offer a stunning view of Central Park in Manhattan. But that's not the only reason Gwyneth Paltrow and P. Diddy Combs chose that hospital for their children. Think blankets made from muslin cotton and massage therapy to relieve the pain and stress, and bathrooms with Italian glass tiles and tea and cookies served in the afternoon. But at the top of the hospital birthing experience list is the Matilda Hospital in Hong Kong. It's the ultimate in maternity pampering. It offers rooms with balconies overlooking the ocean. Now, Mom, when you were delivering, did you care about any of that kind of stuff? Had refrigerators filled with juices and bottled water, cable TV and Wi-Fi. The doctor in charge of the delivery there is your personal gynecologist and obstetrician, and they'll be the one booking your stay and making all the necessary arrangements. It's advisable to ask your doctor to make reservations as early as possible, as most rooms at the Matilda Hospital are fully booked 7 months in advance. Better hope baby doesn't come early or late, because if they do, you'll be out your $20,000 deposit, the down payment just to book a room. Talk about being born into the lap of luxury. Of course, the baby doesn't really know that all that's going on. It's pretty much the same experience for the little bundle of joy, whether they're born in the Matilda Hospital in Hong Kong, in the luxurious birthing suites there, or in a back alley in a city slum, or in a barn meant for horses and cattle. Of course, the baby has to have rich parents to get the luxury suite. But we know the birth story of Jesus so well that we look right past the ridiculous spectacle that it really actually is. The Son of God himself, creator of heaven and earth and cosmos, the King of kings and Lord of lords, the mighty God to whom all things belong, being born in a space set aside for housing animals. Poor conditions even by poverty's standards. His birth, rightly announced by the angels of the armies of heaven, but this majestic announcement was given not to kings and rulers and potentates. It was given only to some poor, uncouth shepherds out in the wilderness who smelled of sheep and sweat and manure. That baby's first visitors weren't Israel's priests and religious leaders, the scribes and the Pharisees, nor were they Israel's puppet king Herod, who'd been appointed by Rome to oversee Israel and Syria. That baby's first visitors were the aforementioned shepherds, and some astrologers and magicians from a land almost 1,000 miles away to the east, the land Rome called Babylonia. We know it today as Iraq. We know the story so well that we look right past the absurdity of it all. The way in which just the birth of Jesus foreshadows his entire life on this earth. The way in which everything about him stands our world and everything we think is important on its head. His birth is living testimony to the truth of Psalm 138:6. Old Testament words that were quoted not once but twice in the New Testament, once by James and once by Peter. A psalm that says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And of course, we know the words the babe in the manger would speak as an adult. So the last will be first and the first last. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man himself came not to be served, as was his right, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. The kingdom of God standing everything that we know and acknowledge and value on its head. So let's turn now to the all too familiar words of Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, and try to see with new eyes and hear with new ears and listen with an open heart. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth, to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. When the President of the United States travels by car, he travels in a presidential motorcade, right? It's the safest and at the same time riskiest convoy on the planet. This globe-trotting fleet of vehicles is basically a rolling armored White House, complete with its own response force, communications office, press corps, and medical facilities, all in those vehicles transporting the president. And all of those vehicles are moved to wherever the president is going, even other countries, via U.S. Air Force heavy transport such as C-17s, and those flights come at a steep cost. They drive those vehicles right onto the planes, and they drive them off wherever the president's going. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of vehicles in the presidential motorcade. There's the route car and the pilot car, which travel ahead of the motorcade, checking the route and providing guidance, kind of an advance guard. And then there are sweepers, consisting of motorcycles and patrol cars that are clearing the way. And then there are the presidential limousine and several other vehicles that look just like it, so that no one knows which vehicle the president is in. The presidential limousine is this very heavy Cadillac, but it's really an extremely survivable armored car. The Beast, they call it, is outfitted with top-level ballistic armoring, night vision and infrared driving systems, a sealed cabin with an independent air supply capable of enduring a nuclear, biological, and chemical attack, and even a supply of the president's blood type. All of this in addition to a state-of-the-art communication system. And then there's at least one, if not more, identical limousines. At least one identical car always accompanies it, and sometimes many more. These cars are used as a backup as well as serving as decoys. And then following the motorcade is the security detail SUV that's filled with heavily armed agents. There's an electronic countermeasures vehicle so that if a threat is detected, smoke and chaff and targeted jamming can disrupt the attack. And there's the press van, an ambulance in case there's an accident or attack, and helicopters overhead to provide overwatch. All of the technology that goes into protecting the President of the United States is amazing, and so is the price tag. It's estimated that the White House spends $350 million a year on the President's transportation. How many of you spent $350 million this year on your car? One trip costs $2,614 each. Each trip costs that, and every minute. It costs $2,614 each and every minute to transport the leader of the free world. Jesus, on the other hand, came as a vulnerable infant. I mean, what's more vulnerable than a baby? They can't move themselves. They can't feed themselves. They can go to the bathroom, but not usually in the right place. They can't roll over yet. They really can't do anything. If it's attacked, it can't run away. It's dependent upon its mom and its dad for protection completely. And this mom and dad weren't anything special. A peasant girl and her soon-to-be husband, a young couple from the poor, remote village of Nazareth. And he came and was born to this poor couple in livestock housing in Bethlehem. And it's interesting because Luke begins by drawing our attention not to the baby, but to Caesar, the ruler of the most advanced and powerful empire the world had known up to that point. Luke calls him Caesar Augustus, emphasizing his supreme power and authority because his birth name was Gaius Octavian. And he was the grandnephew and adopted son of the mighty Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, you may remember, was immortalized in the great Shakespearean play by the same name. He led the Roman armies to victory in the Gallic Wars, during which he did the unthinkable and he bridged the Rhine River, led his army into northern and western Europe, to places the Roman Empire had never been before, places they didn't even know existed. And then he invaded Britain. And then he defeated his Roman political rival Pompey in a civil war that led to him having power that was virtually unchallenged. And it led to the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. All of that happening at the hands of Julius Caesar, a single dictator. He was soon assassinated, however, and his 19-year-old heir, his adopted son, his grandnephew, Gaius Octavian, used the resulting chaos to his advantage to maneuver the empire. He was 19 years old. He had maneuvered the most powerful empire in the world under his sole control, extending the legacy of his adoptive father. He was shrewd and savvy, a ruler able to manipulate political alliances to his advantage. At one point, he saw Halley's Comet in the night sky, and he used that to his advantage, declaring to the superstitious Romans that it was his father, his adoptive father, Julius Caesar, entering heaven as a god, which of course made him what? The son of a god. He then began to take on other titles, including the title Augustus, which means supreme ruler. One inscription from that time reads, Divine Augustus Caesar, son of a god, imperator of land and sea, and benefactor and savior of the whole world. So when Luke says, in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered, he doesn't use the name Caesar Octavian, by which he is also known. He uses the name Caesar Augustus, emphasizing his role as the supreme ruler of the world, one who was viewed by most of his constituents as divine. A God himself, certainly the Son of a God. I mean, nothing more than the word of Caesar's mouth initiates the movement of the whole known world, from Luke's perspective, the Roman Empire, to engage in a census to pay to Rome the head tax. In other words, you're a person, you owe this much money to Caesar. So he, with the word of his mouth, decreed that everyone in his realm would pay him a certain amount of money just to exist. And also, in many of their lands, the possibility of being conscripted into the Roman military service. You look big and strong. Back here. You're in the army now. Congratulations. Jews were, by arrangement with Rome, subject only to the head tax, not to military service, or it's likely that Joseph, a strapping young carpenter, would have been selected. So people were just picking up and moving to be counted and to pay this head tax just because Caesar said so. Against that backdrop, the actual Son of God, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, is born. Not in the palaces and mansions of Rome, but in a stable in Bethlehem. And not to the wealthy and connected and powerful families of the world, but to a painfully poor peasant family from Nazareth, a town that no one wanted as their hometown. No one had a Nazareth sticker on the back of their camel. All right? Nazareth High, my son is an honor student at Nazareth High School. They didn't have that. In fact, it was a town of which it was asked, and this question was asked by one of the people who became one of Jesus' disciples when he found out that Jesus was from Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth? It was a rhetorical question. The answer was no. Young Mary and her husband Joseph, both dirt poor, had traveled from their home in Nazareth to Bethlehem because Joseph was descended from Israel's greatest king, David. That tiny village of Bethlehem just south and west of Jerusalem was the town of his heritage. And so that was where, at the order of Caesar, they had to travel for the census. So it appears on the surface that this was at the order of Caesar. But Jewish scholars knew that the Old Testament prophets spoke often of God's Messiah who would come to redeem God's people. And the prophet Micah in particular spoke of the birthplace of the Messiah when he said, "But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah." There's that theme again, too little. It wasn't a big place. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be the ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. The great and mighty Caesar Augustus, nothing more than a pawn in the hands of the Creator God of the universe, moving one carefully selected family, a young couple, or soon-to-be couple, from their home in Nazareth in Bethlehem, or to Bethlehem, to fulfill the prophecy that had been given 500 years prior. I mean, the baby whose birth story is being told in Luke is mentioned just once in this passage. Twice if you count that, Luke says his mother was with child. Caesar's census and tax are mentioned 4 times in these 7 verses. It may appear that Caesar, the supreme ruler of the whole world, as Luke says, is moving people around and accomplishing his will, but it is God at work here, moving Mary and Joseph, and thus Jesus, not even born yet, from Nazareth to Bethlehem for the birth. Caesar appears to be in charge, but God is the one who is really at work. The mighty Caesar just a tool, a pawn in his hand. Politics and finances and fame and the powerful and influential and mighty who twist those things for their purposes may seem to rule the day. But we can rest in the knowledge that God is in control, moving all of human history to his desired destination for his express purpose. Now, Luke's doing something else here, too. He's placing the birth of Jesus squarely in the middle, not just of Jewish events like Matthew does, because Matthew emphasizes the Jewish puppet ruler under Rome, the ruler over Herod that Rome had installed over the Jews. He emphasizes Herod. But Luke doesn't. He doesn't even mention him. He mentions Caesar. And Quirinius, Caesar's governor in that region. He's placing the birth of Jesus squarely in the middle, not just of Jewish events, but in the middle of global history and events. The birth of Jesus is something that will impact all people everywhere, in all places and in all times. It is both global and eternal in its scope. It is a cosmic event, heralded by angels to shepherds. The King of Kings and Lord of Lords, for whom Caesar's nothing more than a pawn, born in a manger. You see, the birth and work of Jesus may be universal and global and eternal in its scope, but he is eminently accessible to all who wish to draw near to him and follow him. Access to the mighty Caesar was highly limited. He was guarded 24/7 by the best soldiers and bodyguards they could find. If you tried to walk into the royal palace in Rome, you'd be quickly and firmly turned aside. The King who rules all kings, the Lord over all lords, Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, the eternal Son of God, was born in a stable. Shepherds could walk right in and know exactly how to act because they were used to barns. They were comfortable there. The poor and the uncouth and the lowly wouldn't know how to act in the marble halls of Rome any more than you and I would. But they knew how to act in a barn. And Jesus grew up on the streets of Nazareth. Actually, it was probably more like one street. Not many people lived there. It was way up in the hills. And by hills, I don't mean like, woo. I mean like, woo. It was hard to get there, and there wasn't much there. But because it was located so high and could oversee the whole valley, there was a Roman garrison there. So most Jews preferred to avoid the place. Jesus didn't come to the sacred streets of Jerusalem or the richly paved streets of power in Rome. He was born in Bethlehem. He came from Nazareth, by all accounts, an average Joe. Not born into wealth and power, but into poverty and insignificance. Eminently approachable for all who wish to come to him. He is right here. Emmanuel. God with us and God for us. No need to impress or to be born into power and influence for him to notice you. You just got to be yourself. To come as you are, knowing that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords is waiting for you looking for you, offering you forgiveness and grace and mercy. Now look carefully at verse 7. We know it well, don't we? And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. This verse echoes another verse in Luke, a verse that's found much later in the gospel. In Luke chapter 23, verses 52 and 53, we read, "This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid him in a tomb." Took, wrapped in cloth, laid. Just as the babe was wrapped in cloths and laid in a manger, so the man was wrapped in cloth and laid in a tomb. Luke is already foreshadowing the fullness of the ministry of Jesus. The one who was laid in a manger was nailed to a cross. Jesus' life on this earth is bracketed by the two greatest miracles, the virgin's womb and the empty tomb. So what are you doing with the gift God has given you? Are you distracted by the trappings of power and wealth and success and significance, as are most people? Or are you gazing in wonder at the wonder of wonders, the all-powerful Creator, God of the universe, daring to become like us in order to show us the depth of His love for us? A love that would take Him from the cradle to the cross, paving the way for our sins to be forgiven. Let's pray. Loving God, thank you. That's all we can say. I don't deserve this gift. Thank you for the gift of Jesus, for the way He came, for the fact that He came, and that He came for each person in this room, a schmuck like me included, to offer forgiveness and grace. May we just stand in awe of it tonight and receive the gift. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.